Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Racing Insiders podcast. You guys are really in for a treat today. One of my really good friends, very special to me, and somebody I've worked with for, I guess over 10 years at this point. And I just want to introduce you to this amazing person. He is the owner of Daytona1. And this is Buck Parker. So, Buck, welcome to the Racing Insiders podcast, or welcome back. You
Thank
were a
you.
guest on the show back in like 2019,
Wow.
and so welcome back to the show.
Yeah, it's been too long, but you're way too kind with your words. I like that intro. That's very nice.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you. I just made that up. I realized, oh my gosh, I
Well,
did
we
an
have been
intro.
friends for 10 years. We have worked together. You're right. That's
And
cool.
we've done a ton of videos together on
Yes.
many of your products, and I love seeing how your product line has really expanded. For anybody who's not familiar with Daytona1, Buck is here. He's humble, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it for him. But Buck is in the NASA Technology Hall of Fame for a lubricant that you designed for the NASA space shuttle. You want to tell people a little bit about that?
Actually, we need to clarify. It wasn't for the shuttle. It was to carry the shuttle. It was for the crawler.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It was the shuttle program, I
Yeah,
guess.
the shuttle
Yes.
program. Yes.
Yes.
If anybody's ever seen the shuttle go down its little runway to go to the launch pad, it has to be carried by this huge machine called the crawler. And the crawler is about the size, well, it is as big as a football field. And it runs on these huge road, like a road, big tracks. Let's put it like that. And the tracks themselves weigh 3,000 pounds apiece, and they're held on and pushed by pin on disc. And the pin on disc basically would get into a bind. So when the shuttle in its own right at the top, when it starts moving more than the size of a basketball, it shut the program down. So the more that they had problems with the lubrication of it, the more they had to shut the program down. And then they started putting more lubricants in it. And the more lubricants that they used, they were polluting the aquifer, because they'd dump down the path. They would put at least a drum on, and coming back they put a drum on, and next thing you know, the water down below it was getting polluted by the I don't want to make this long, but it's getting polluted by the oil that was going down. And they called me one day and asked me, could I come down and ask, and because we had went and met with them several times to talk about our biodegradable non-toxic programs. And so we met them the next Monday morning, and we were down there looking at the whole process and realized that we can make this product. And so later that week, we sent them 2 drums down. And you have to understand, this shuttle, if you go not the shuttle, but the crawler, if you go inside of it, it's like being in a submarine. I mean, it's so neat. You go in there and say, oh my, you'd never know that it had that kind of technology in it. And it looked like a space shuttle inside. And
Wow.
so we were under it. I brought several of my guys, and we had probably 10 of their engineers, and we were walking under it, and it was so loud you couldn't hear yourself think. And going down the track, and next thing they start pumping the lubricants in. So we got a third of the way down, and it wasn't even a third. It was about 200 or 300 yards, and it started getting calmer and cooler, and not cooler, but necessarily quieter. And you could almost, a little bit farther, you could almost talk. And about half the way down, I saw the engineers high-fiving. And next thing I know, they said they were just elated. They were happy because they'd never heard it run that smooth and that quiet with a biodegradable product, period. With the regular products, much less a biodegradable. So we left there, and we were very happy. Everybody was elated. And about 3 months later, we got a little thing in the mail, said that we had been nominated to the NASA Space Technology Hall of Fame, and that was really a neat thing. But I come to find out there was over 100 people nominated for that. And I said, well, it's still neat. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
And so the next thing I know, about 3 or 4 months later, they said we're in the top 10. And I said, now this is pretty cool. And that was even a whole lot nicer. And then it was probably about 3 or 4 months after that, we got a thing in the mail and a phone call that says, can you be out in Colorado at such and such time and all this other stuff? You're being inducted into the NASA Space Technology Hall of Fame. And I still get hair, my hair stand up. I mean, you know what I'm talking about? It's so cool. And to be out there and see nothing but a sea of suits and every general and commodore and every person that you can imagine that was there. I mean, it was amazing. I'm still in awe of it. It was just you just pinch yourself. You don't get many of those opportunities in your lifetime. So anyway, I didn't mean to take up so much time, Kate, but it was pretty cool.
No, I think it's a fascinating story, and it's something I think a lot of people don't think about. How does the space shuttle get from the hangar out to the rocket launch pad or whatever you wanna call it, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, I would've just thought you drove it out there, but then how do you stand it up? I don't know. I mean, but it's just really interesting to think about, and then, of course, that takes lubricants to make that work.
Yeah.
Just like racing, of course, racing is why we're here in the Racing Insiders podcast, but,
Mhm.
so kinda how did you get started, or how did your company shift from doing, lubricants for, yeah, I don't even know what you were working on before racing, but so much of your line now is racing related. How did you shift into to getting started with racing stuff, racing applications?
Well, Kate, lubricants are as good as the base stocks and as good as additive packages. And we pride ourselves, you know, we don't have any Me Too products. Our products are specifically designed for an application. So we research and you can find the finest base stocks that we can get. We also find the finest additive packages, and then as you know, we have a patented process or patent pending process, the PTRO, which is a purpose tuned racing oil, where we'll design the oil for the application, for the motor and for the racetrack, and the heat, and the whole process. So there's a lot goes into it, and early in the and early in the mid 80s, I guess you'd say, and towards the early 90s, I guess, we had an opportunity to get involved in local racing where we made additive packages, and we realized that we can actually make an engine cool down. We can actually make it go faster and give it more horsepower. So we worked on that on a local basis for a good little while. And I happened to be with a friend of mine one afternoon, and I said, if I could only get into one of these NASCAR guys, engine builders, I think I could really show him something. And his name was Doug Davis. He's a dear friend. And then, long story short, he said, well, let me make a phone call. He said, I feed these guys every year, and I didn't know what he was talking about. And but he actually had a relationship with the #4 Kodak car, and that was Larry McClure at the time. I don't think they're around now, but they were some of the fastest engines that there were at that time. Sterling Marlin drove for him, Ernie Irvin, several people. And he made the phone call, and next thing I know, I had a phone call from a gentleman named Runt. He said, this is Runt. And I didn't know who Runt was, but at that time, his name was Sheldon Pittman, his real name. And he says, and I think somebody twisted his arm because it wasn't like he really wanted to see me, I don't believe. But he said, if you'll be here by 10 o'clock in the morning, he says, we'll test your products. And I says, okay, where you at? He says, Abington, Virginia. Well, I'm sitting in Daytona Beach, and it's 6 o'clock. And I says, I didn't hesitate. I says, I'll be there. So a friend of mine, and at that time, I was driving a 280ZX, or I had one anyway, and we loaded that car up, and we were in Abington, Virginia, about 6:30 in the morning. We got to the hotel and got an hour of sleep, and then was there at 10 o'clock, and walked in there, and I've never seen trophies in that room. I said, the trophies is bigger. The base of them is bigger than my dining room table. It stood forever. And so it was, and then he finally come to the door and he says, I'm busy right now. Come back in a little while. And I says, oh no. I said, I've done all this for all night long for nothing. So we drove around Abington, which was a beautiful town. And then we got back over there and he come to the door and finally he took me back through all the cars and the place was immaculate. It was, I've never seen, there 12 or 14 cars lined up down through. They're just immaculate. You could have eat off of anything there. And then when we got into the engine room, I promise you, there's surgery, people having surgery in places a lot dirtier than that place. It was that, and it was that nice. And so we took the Phalex machine, our test machine, and we showed him our products. And then he says, well, you mind if we test a few things? So he goes in the back, and everything that at the time General Motors had sent him, we tested and tested. We tested for over an hour at least. And he says, well, let's try it. And I says, okay, how do you want to try it? And then he says, well, we've got the qualifying motor on the dyno right now. Let's try it and see what it does. And now it's getting pretty serious because those are high dollar motors. And I've been in a lot of engines at the time, but I'd never been in one of those. Anyway, I'm trying to make this quick. So we go in there, we put 2 ounces per quart in it, and I just had barely enough because I didn't realize they had a dry sump system that holds 36 quarts. And I just had enough to treat it. And I said, run it in for 35 miles. And that took about 2 seconds. And then, and then I said, well, bring it back to temperature. And I says, well, first I asked him to do a test run. He said, no. He said, I know everything that you can possibly know about this engine. He said, we don't need, he said, I can tell you everything about this engine. And I said, okay. And right then I figured you don't argue with this gentleman anyway. So Daryl, the guy that was running the dyno, he takes it up to 3,000. I'll never forget. He takes it up to 3,000 RPM, smashes this green button, and the computer takes over. There's not a manual deal, and the computer takes over, and it goes up through its stage, and it sounds like it's coming apart, kind of. I mean, it's really twisted. And then it shuts off, and Daryl reaches over and takes this paper off. And I'm used to dyno reports being about, this wide.
Mm-hmm.
I can't put it on the screen. It was this wide. It showed everything you can imagine. And he said, that's the best run we've ever had. And he hands it to Runt. And and Runt looks at it and says, run that again. So he did. He goes through the whole process and runs it again. And he when he pulls it off, he said, that's even better. And he hands it to him. And they're handing me this dyno sheet that's got more stuff on it than I'd ever seen. And I'm just shaking my head. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. And then he actually says, go get Larry. He said, go get Larry. And so Larry comes in there, and Larry sits down. He says, he looks at it all, and he says, let me run it. He goes down, and he runs it. He takes it up to 3,000 RPM, smashes the green button. It gets to about 6,000 RPM and started sputtering. And I'm telling you, I to this day, I still get scared almost, but it started sputtering, and it seemed like a half an hour. And before anybody said anything, but it was only probably a second. And he said, has this ever done this before? And then it seemed like another half an hour went by. And Daryl said, oh, yeah, it's a distributor wire. It come loose this morning. He said, and they tightened it up. He finished running it. I know that we gave them 14.3 horsepower on that motor. And I don't know how much more because they wouldn't show me the last sheet. But we were down, and they won the Daytona 500 2 weeks later. And then,
wow.
And then we had a decal. If you look on the back of their cars, there's a decal on the bottom of the quarter panel about this big, and so that's how we got involved in, and that's how we really got involved in racing.
Wow.
Long story, isn't it? I'm sorry, but it's
No, but if you're gonna get involved in racing, you might as well just go straight for NASCAR, right? You know, everything
and
else
big
is
time racing anyway. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
No,
cool.
that's fascinating, and for anybody who's watching, you're welcome to drop in any, comments or questions, and we're here to, answer any of your questions. I see Scott is here saying, "Hi, Kate from calm and sunny California." Poor California, and Scott is always on the podcast. He's always the first one to comment, so thank you, Scott, and, glad to see that it's, sunny, calm and sunny, because California has certainly had their ups and downs with some weather issues this year for sure. And I thought we were gonna have a weather issue here, actually, we were supposed to get I was kept hearing about this massive rainstorm, but it just rained a little bit, and now it's done, and, it's not bad
We got
today.
it is
Yeah.
so hot in Florida. I mean,
Mm,
so I wish I had you can walk out and you can be out just for a few minutes and you need to go take a shower.
mhm.
I mean, you'll just start sweating and there's nothing to stop it. But it was in the mid 90s. They say it's going to be probably over 100 tomorrow here.
Wow.
That's hot.
Well, it's not just hot, but it's not even like a sauna, because a sauna is too much of a dry heat to be like what it's like.
Oh gosh.
It's so soggy and muddy. Oh, and I see our friend Tommy Belmer is here. He says, "Hi guys, now you and me gotta go live, Buck." Yep, and
Tommy,
Tommy, I'm using StreamYard, so
yeah,
StreamYard's a good choice here for being able to go live.
Tommy tried to teach me how to get online once. You know I'm no good at this, Kate. If you didn't set it up so easy, well, all I had to do was mash a button. I would. I, you'd probably not see me. You might hear me or something. You know what I'm talking about. It's
Oh,
just one
I
of those
do, I
things.
do, yeah, but, the big special thanks to the podcast producer, Tori Radford, in my office is the
Oh
producer of the Racing Insiders podcast, so and then, Danielle Lookabill, she helps out as well, so we've got our
yeah.
whole team here that helps out with the
Mhm.
podcast
Yeah.
situation. I just get to show up and, well, hook up all the equipment and there's that. Ask questions, push buttons, that deal.
Yeah.
It's all good. But one thing I've learned a lot from you when it comes to these fluids and racing is parasitic drag. And I can never quite explain it the way that you do, because when you explain it, I completely understand parasitic drag, but I can never seem to turn around and explain it in the same way. So tell me how you I would love to hear your explanation of parasitic drag and how it slows down a race car, or how we can eliminate parasitic drag and it can
Okay.
free things up.
Well, first off, what's cool. Lubricants need to go in, lubricate, and leave. Go in, lubricate, and leave. When they go in, lubricate, and leave, they actually take the heat away from it. So it needs, flow is much better than pressure. And so when you do need a certain amount of pressure, but you need a lot of flow. So that if when I guess the easiest way. All right, so everybody's been to the auto parts store and you've taken that little wheel and you rolled it up and down. I know I have a bunch of times, and just and that oil will basically track itself all the way to the top because number one, it's thick, and it also has tachyfiers in it. But that type of lubrication is the worst thing that can happen for a race car. For instance, if you put a coat on, basically you get warm. All right. So if you take it off, you get cool. Okay. So if we take the parasitic drag away, you'll cool it down a lot more. All right. So if you put a coat on, you get warm. All right. Also, you don't move as well. So if you take it off, then you can move better. So that's very similar situation in the engine, in the rear end, and everything. So what you want to do is allow your oil to go in, lubricate, and leave, let it flow, and not let it have stiction. It's what they call And so you want to defrictionate it, and that's our word, by the way, defriction. You don't want it to have stiction. So if you take the quote stiction away, then and allow the defrictionators to work, then everything it's going to run cooler, it's going to run smoother, and you're going to get more performance out of either the motor, transmission, rear end, power steering. It doesn't matter where it's at. I hope I answered that good enough.
You did. It made so much sense. I also liked how another way that you've described it to me too, especially talking about gear oil, is that when that oil will stick to itself and then it sticks on to the
Oh,
surface, let's say a
yeah,
gear.
I
Yeah.
should have told that story because when we first started making the gear oils, you really want to see what's happening inside the rear end. So we designed a little way that we could put a camera up in there so you could see what was going on. And what was amazing to me is when you could actually see the axles that go from the rear end would start they're about what, an inch and a half around or whatever they are, but they would almost double in size because the oil that was, and I'm not going to say whose oil it was, but the oil that was in there would basically make that axle get almost twice as big around. So you don't want that. That's drag. So if it's sticking to that like that and making that get big around, it's sticking to everything else. So you really want the oil again to flow, to go in, lubricate, and leave, and to have a constant movement. So the additive packages are what stops wear, not the viscosity. Viscosity, does not stop wear. Viscosity can cause you problems. So you want, just for instance, in our crate motors, we know that there's a specific situation with the lifters. You have to have a certain amount of because these are hydraulic factory lifters. They will lose some of the pumping and high RPMs if that. And I can tell you that story because I dyno tested with, and we gave with Steve Hendren and them, great guys. They did a heck of a job with we were dynoing with them, and then we showed all this horsepower with our engine treatment. So I said, my first oil, I'm going to knock this out of the park. So I built a nice 20 weight, and that we knew was just going to kill everybody. It didn't have to worry about any wear, but we had it all figured out as far as the protection values and everything. So I go up with Steve and we put this in, and I think he already knew I was going to fail, but we run that machine, the engine up there, and I actually lost horsepower. And I said, how do you lose horsepower? I mean, I got the best oil in the world, got the best base stocks, I got the best additive package. And he says, the lifter. He said, you got to keep that lifter built up. He said, because when you get to higher RPMs, that lifter will, and I says, goodness gracious. And so you think that you know everything, but you don't. But you have to listen to these engine builders because Steve especially is very smart. And anyway, long story short, so we go back, we put the other oil back in it, and then we put our engine treatment back on it, and then we gained the horsepower that we needed. So I learned a lesson. So what I also learned after that is that normal motor oils that are out there on the shelf, when you buy even base stocks, if you say you have a 30 weight, a 30 weight oil can legally be a 34 weight or a 26 weight. All right, so now, okay, so the guy goes and buys him a 30 weight oil off the shelf or from somebody, and he puts it into his car, and all of a sudden he said, it ain't running as good as it did. He said, or at the end of the race, he said, my engine fell off. Well, the engine didn't fall off. The oil fell off. I mean, you have to understand that when that oil falls off, when it gets hot, it loses some of its viscosity, it loses some of its thickness, and then that lifter won't stay up. So that's why we designed our lowest weight oil is a 40 weight. We have a 5W40 and a 1540. Our 540 is the best. We think the best oil in the world, and as far as from a racing standpoint. And we've got a lot of people that's winning a lot of races with it. So undoubtedly they think so too. But we're I know I'm long-winded, Kate, so you have to stop me. You just interrupt any time.
No, 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 this is all great. And I want you to keep going because there's another important aspect of fluids, and especially with oils in a racing application, is temperature. And when we talk about viscosity and we look at, talking about your 540, let's talk about what those two numbers mean, first of all. Because isn't the five number, isn't that at 0 degrees?
Yeah,
Um,
actually,
yeah, go,
it's when it's
let's
cold.
talk about viscosities and then we can go into temperatures on race cars.
Well, actually, you won't. For instance, a 0 weight, a 5 weight, or 20 weight. The first number is for winter, not weight.
Mhm.
So, people say it's a five W40 5 weight. It's not. That five stands for winter. So
Mhm.
that's how it flows when it's cold.
And is that
That's
32 degrees or is it
it.
32 degrees
It's
Celsius
set at
or the
32,
Fahrenheit?
but the temp the it what really matters is when it's cold, it'll flow. When it's hot, it gets thicker. Basically that's because the package that's in it allows it to when it goes through it's curved to get thicker. And so you want it to flow. And for instance, a lot of people like to run a 2050. All right. When you don't want a 20 weight at 0 degrees or 30 degrees, because my oil will be at the top of the engine working when that one's still thinking about getting out and getting it through the pump. And so people need to understand that. Now that's in the wintertime and that's when it's cold. Now when it's hot, that 2050 it'll flow better. I mean, when it's cold, but because it's not. But you got to remember, you really it doesn't matter what that first number is, as long as your top number is where you want at a certain temperature, like in our PTRO or purpose tuned racing oils. We know where. In other words, all right. So, how many crate engines are out there, and how many of them run different fuels? And how there's a lot of them that never see over 180 degrees. Now, and I was with an engine builder. This was several years back. That and he was telling me that they take the temperature gauge clean out of the car because he don't want his racer, the race car driver, to see it because he's running 300 plus degrees in there. And then I realized the need for the PTRO at that point, purpose tuned racing oil. So if you're running say you're running an engine that's running methanol and you never see over 180 degrees, I'd recommend. And a lot of times you'll wash down the cylinder walls and it'll contaminate the oils depending on how your setting is, and the oil will get milky. Well, I recommend using our 1540 because we put an additive package in there to keep that into a suspension to where the ethanol itself won't separate and actually cause all the corrosion. So because when you running the methanol, not ethanol, the methanol, and you shut it off, and if you don't have a system to where it's put into an emulsion and stays into emulsion, they will separate. And then that methanol will cause corrosion inside your motor. So that's the last thing that you want, So it's I don't. Did I answer the right question? I get
Oh,
you know me.
you
I'll
did.
go
No,
long.
you're good. You're good. I do wanna go into specifics about, engine temperatures, though, because I think when you were building your oils, you also really there was a big question in the first place whether you were gonna do oil. We've talked about it for years and years. And, because you said, "Hey, there's a lot of good oils out there," but
They
then you
are
dug deeper, and when you saw what was happening to these oils at higher temperatures, sure, some guys are only getting 180 degrees, but
mhm,
I think we also talked about there are some engines out there where the engine oil can be 300 degrees. And
300
then
plus. Yeah,
what's happening to those oils at 300 degrees, and
standard.
which ones
Mhm.
stand up to, which ones really will stand up when you
And
talk about
people
falling off.
and there's another people need to understand that there's people say, well, I use a synthetic. Well, that's not good enough because there's different synthetics. There's a lot of different synthetics, and what we were finding that and the additive packages that they use. I mean, they will start if you don't use the right additive package, and 90% of them that are out there that are bought from several companies that are just added to the base stock. And we make our engine treatment. We make them in house, so they're specifically designed for the application. And but your normal additive packages will start deteriorating about 240, 250, 260, and about 270 they really start to deteriorate. So if you don't have the right packaging, and when the additives start deteriorating, then the oil starts. But basically, that's what makes the oil work. So it starts deteriorating, and then you'll have a fall off on it. You'll have wear. You'll have all kinds of things that go wrong. And then so when we were doing this, and that going back to my buddy that's the engine builder, and he said there's a need for an oil that will handle 300 degrees. And so that got me to thinking. I says, but I'm not going to make a Me Too type product. I mean, that's not what we do. We're not a huge company. We're a boutique specialty company. Our goal is to be the best company and make the best products that we can possibly make in the world. And we're not cheap, but we're not the most expensive, I find, either. But our products, I think, will stand up to anybody's in the world, and maybe a whole lot better than most. So, and I'm not saying that bragging. That's just the way I feel. But having that said, did I answer the right question again?
You totally did. Yes, yes. I mean, the whole idea is that a lot of these engine oils can be amazing up to a certain temperature, but at those high temperatures they can break down, and you've already solved that. I mean, that was something that you built into your design process, was to make sure that your oils and your additive packages wouldn't separate, deteriorate, or anything like that. It would stay and keep doing its work. Because that's really when it matters. It matters in those last. If you got a 100-lap race, what matters? The first 99 laps don't matter. It's that last lap that does.
Well, at the end of how many times has a racer told you my car fell off at the end of the race?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We know tires fall off. We know there's certain things fall off, but we also know that the motor oil falls off.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can take that part of the equation out, where they don't have to worry about the motor oil, then and a lot of the people that call into your show, we've been very fortunate that, and so we fix that problem.
Yes. Yes.
That's it. I don't know. That's the easiest way. If you want a great oil, we have them. We have two we got four actually superior oils, but there's some we do have a 2050 in our line now, only because I don't recommend it, but people want it, and you have to give people what they want. And but we make a great 2050. But if you're going to tell me what do I need to go racing with, it's going to be my 540 most of the time.
Yeah.
Unless you got a really loose built motor.
Yeah, there you go. You mentioned tires, and I know this is a little bit controversial depending on what area of the country is listening to this show. But in some areas, or you've found an area with your tire treatments, and then it kind of circles back to what we first talked about with like the space shuttle program and finding a solution that was a biodegradable solution to the space shuttle program. Well, you've taken those same parameters, and rather than just yet another tire treatment that is going to break down tires, kill the environment, kill animals, harm small children, all of that, you've taken the biodegradable aspect, brought it over to tire treatment, and now there's even tell us about the series in the Midwest and how that's working with tires and your tire treatments. To talk all about that series, because I think it's fascinating.
Well, years and years ago, I probably 7, 8 years, 9 years ago, I can't remember that. A friend of mine that's a racer came to me and says, can you make a tire treatment that doesn't burn your eyes and stink like crazy and cost a fortune? I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, some of the stuff that I use, he says you can't even get into a trailer. And I hadn't been around these products at all at that point in time. So we started looking into it, and it sort of intrigued me that the technology was so antiquated, and I mean, people were still using Crisol, and Crisol's been banned for a long time, but you still figure out a way to find it and use it. And so we started looking into it, and we were able to develop a couple of products that really, really work. We have a grip bite aqua, a grip bite green, a grip bite black, and a grip bite blue that for specific applications really do the job. And there's there's a need for the products out there. There's a lot of people can't afford to buy new tires every week. Once we started making the products and we got into it a little bit more, and got involved with a group out in the Midwest, and it just sort of grew into a situation called now that we're trying to help build this series. It's called the Daytona1 Gen X Late Model Series, but they were already working with used tires. They already knew the need for a racer to be able to go and out there and race affordable. And so they designed the late model that uses a 602 type engine, steel bodied shocks, and with no valves or anything, no weight adjustment. And you have to use takeoffs, use tires. And there's all kind of rules that you got to go to. It can't have so much depth, and you can still sipe them and cut them and treat them and everything, do whatever you want to a tire. But we found that by using the products that we make, we can actually allow that tire to come back to almost new a feel. I mean, they're running within a second of the big boys with new tires, so it's pretty cool. So we're excited about trying to help the series grow. We would love to see if we can get 2 or 3 racetracks down in the South, and 2 or 3 other places that might embrace this idealism. But the guys up there, it seems like it's going to be the fastest growing series in the Midwest, because of people can actually afford to go racing. They don't have to buy new tires every weekend. So for $20,000-$25,000, they can field a late model that really goes fast and really looks great. So I'm maybe I shouldn't have spoke out of turn. I might be wrong about the 20 or 25,000, but that's what they tell me. So I hadn't bought a race car in a long time, so I don't know. But the tires work.
Well, and and I think the technology that you've brought to tire treatments, like you mentioned, it was very antiquated. Whether it's creosote or toluene or kerosene or just, those other ones. I would actually, when I hear some of those chemicals, I kind of think about it like the idea of marinating meat, and the whole idea of marinating is to really kind of break up the cell structure, and that releases the flavor, like when you're talking about meats and marinating or salt and things like that. And I would think that some of those really harsh chemicals, what they're doing is they're breaking down the tire, making it soft and mushy, but because they're breaking it down, and that would make it, I know a lot of these series, they say that they ban tire treatments because they're dangerous. I mean, whether it's harsh chemicals or you're damaging the tire and you're going to increase the risk of blowouts. Now, your tire treatments aren't like that at all. I always feel like the way I describe them to people is they think about having like a really old leather seat where it's like almost ready to crack, but you put a wonderful leather conditioner on it, and it's like it brings it back to life. It makes it soft and supple. You're not adding anything, you're not changing that it's leather. You're just putting it back in. But maybe you can explain that better.
Yeah, well, one thing that's really cool about the products, number one, they are totally biodegradable, non-toxic. They don't hurt you. They don't smell. And some of these products that are out there, you don't want to get a young child or a pregnant woman next to, because it could cause damage. And I'm not joking when I'm saying
you're not.
It really could. one of the key things that we've learned by working with the series out in the Midwest for so long is the fact that when you have a caution, these boys race hard and their tires get real hot. And one of the things that they used to have a problem with is that once the caution and they cool down, the tires would glaze over. And when they glazed over, they're done. They're done. They might get back to racing in 10 laps, but the race is over by then. What our products, we've been fortunate to find out that our products don't glaze over. All my guys say when the green flag stops, it goes after caution. He says, I can go. And I've got more guys that have said that to me than you can imagine. It's amazing. He says, my tires don't glaze over anymore.
And that's incredible. I didn't know that.
You have to understand what's in the tire. From the factory is a mold release, and that gets embedded in the tire. And the mold release basically is nothing but wax. So depending on who the fellow is that's spraying that mold that day, and depending on the tires and stuff, and every process is different. But they could have more in a certain area, less in a certain area, and it gets beat into the tire, and it stays in the tire until you take it out. We have a means of doing that. But that mold release, if it floats itself back to the top after it cools, it's hot and it cools off, then you're riding. And I don't want to say it's all the mold release, because it's not, because you got those chemicals and those other chemicals in there. But you're riding on a layer of slick stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Yeah. And so until you get it hot enough to get rid of that slick stuff again, you're not going anywhere as far as racing. So after 2 or 3 laps, you might get it hot enough to go fast again. You don't have that problem with ours. And
so interesting.
It's pretty cool. It's just, but that's and anybody that wants to know, I mean, we'll you've got a lot of information, Kate. You can send them in if they don't, just if they send anything in, they want some information, we'll forward it to them. Just whatever you need, because I can't say enough about it. I'd love to see the series. And it doesn't have to be the Gen X late model series. I just like to see the series grow, because I feel that it would allow more of the younger racers to move on up. And a lot of times the guys that are up in the higher classes still want to race, but they don't want to spend, tires are expensive.
Yeah. What are you supposed to do? Spend $1,000 for 4 tires and only so you can race for $800? Like that's just math that makes it hard,
And you got to win. You got to remember that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's racing's expensive enough.
There's about 20 of those guys that aren't going to win.
Right. Yeah.
And they all have to buy those tires. So I think now more power to the racetracks. They've got to make a living. And I don't, and I'm not trying to take anything away from that, because they need to make a living. But I think there's a happy medium that can be had there. I think that and there's piles of tires. There's piles of tires sitting behind these guys' shops. We can take a 2-year-old tire and make it act like I can't say it's brand new, but it races good. And that's the truth.
Yeah, I got into a lot of hot water back in like 2015. I had so much hot water. So anybody who doesn't know, you could look back on YouTube, and so Buck had these 4 products, and I was like, okay, I want to start doing videos. And I was like, well, this is perfect, because I could do one video for each of the 4 products, plus I could put together one compilation video with all 4 of them into a 5th video. And man, I mean, I'm going to have some videos from my YouTube channel. Yeah, the problem was that these were 5 of the first 7 videos that I did for the YouTube channel. And oh my gosh, I absolutely really made some series really, really mad with me. Now it doesn't matter, because there's like 700 videos over there, so nobody can see that. But what I was so amazed with, obviously I trust you, I listen to you and those type of things, but I got to see it for myself, because I did all my videos, and like each of them were one take. And the tire I was using, it's not like I was going to go out. I mean, I was just starting out, I had only been in business for like a year. And so, I mean, I don't have a race car, so I have no reason to go out and buy tires. And so anyway, I took an old tire that was, I mean, it was probably 5 minutes away from dry rotting, is what I was.
Oh yeah.
And I cleaned it up with the aqua, and then I had it on the rotisserie, and because I could use the rotisserie for like a couple of hours for my videos, and then it needed to go on a pallet and be shipped out.
Yeah.
It's like 93 degrees outside, except I'm in the dyno room and I'm like sweating. There's like sweat pouring down my face. So it was interesting. I do this, one round of the Grip Bite Blue on it with my little paint roller. And then I just, everything had to come apart. So I had to take everything off of there and just set the tire aside. Well, this tire, a couple of days later, I go and touch it and I put my fingernail into it. And it was kind of like, I would say it's like a gummy bear. And what I mean by that is like how you could, put your finger into a gummy bear and it's not going to leave a permanent indentation. It's going to, kind of bounce back, kind of like Jello in a way. But I don't want it to sound like it was squishy because it wasn't. It wasn't like melted candy or anything. It was like set up. I was like, wow, this is nice. This really brought this back to life. You wouldn't have known that this tire was 5 minutes away from being absolute junk. So I was really that was really what sold me more than anything else. It's like I saw it for myself.
Yeah, we use elastomers and plasticizers, pardon me, and try to give time. We do give life back to the tire.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard to do. I mean, it does take a little time. You do have to prep the tire properly. You got to get the mold release out of it. You got to get the gunk out of it, and then you got to put some life back into it. And but if you do that, you're going to have a tire that works better for you. It's going to last longer. And people don't understand a tire that has grip don't wear out.
Mm-hmm.
No, but a tire that spins wears out. So if you get grip and bite, your tire is going to last longer. And so that's and I know tire treatments are a no-no a lot of places, and I understand that. But I think there's a place for our world changes.
Mm-hmm.
And the products that were out there 10 years ago, and they had their place, but there's technology changing every day. I mean, guys, look at what's going on. Look around you. Well, we can bring technology into our little world. I'm saying my little world. Racing's a big world, but my little world. And so what we try to do is take each product that we have and see now where's the need,
Mm-hmm.
and how can we fix the need. And then so once we find the need, we try to find the process and we back into fixing the need. So whatever the need is, we want that tire to have more grip and more bite. Well, how can we do that? Well, at the same time, we want it to last longer. Well, how can we do that? Well, that don't make sense. How can you give it grip and bite and make it last longer? Well, then, we need to throw this other thing in there. How do we make an old tire better? But when you put all this thinking together and realize that, hey, it all works. It all works together if you figure it out and build the process. And so that's basically what we had to do. We had to figure out a way to get the tire back to square one, and then what can we put into it to make it better, and then what's the process of making it happen. And you have to make it simple and easy for the guys. So
Yeah. And I love how you make it simple too, because I also get those questions like, okay, does this work for go-kart tires? Does it work on pavement? Does it work just on dirt? Does it work on go-kart tires? And it's like, I love what you always tell me about your products. Every time I ask you, you're like, Kate, my products are going to do what they're designed to do. They don't care where they are.
They don't know where they're at.
Yeah.
Our lubricants, they don't know what engine they're in. I mean, our additive package, our XL1 engine treatment, it'll give a 10 horsepower motor, go-kart motor, about a third to a little bit better than a third of a horsepower. People say a third of a horsepower. Well, that's 1 to 2% on the 10 horsepower. If you think about it. When we gave Morgan McClure years and years and years ago with the X1R Corporation, and that's the company I built and started, we gave them 14.3 horsepower. and then now on our engines on the what we see on the crate motors, you 1 to 2% is around 6 horsepower. So if you're lucky enough, it could be 8. It could be depending on the motor. Every motor is different, so we don't know, but we know you're going to gain, and
Wait,
it happens
yeah.
every time.
When you know what materials are in there. And I think we're going to be touching back on XL1. I see a question here, but first, Chris is here saying hi to both of us. So hi, Chris. Thanks for joining us
Yes.
on the show. And then Donine and Shane, here's a really good question. And I think I'm going to know the answer, but I'm going to let you answer, Buck. They say we have a 2000 Chevy C350. 3500 with 68,000 original miles. Since we have stopped racing, the truck doesn't get driven as much anymore. Do you have an additive or any suggestions to keep the inside of the engine clean? Black Betty has become a garage queen.
Oh goodness gracious! The the first off, the worst thing you can do is crank the motor up and not let it run. In other words, so if you crank it up, you say, "Well, I'm going to go out and crank it up and let it run for 5 minutes." Well, you're better off not starting the engine, because what happens, it'll get just hot enough, and then when it starts cooling off, it'll form moisture, and when it forms moisture in there, that's when you contaminate your oils and stuff like that. When the lady and that we all wanted to buy that car from that lady that only drove to church on Sundays, right? Well, she probably didn't drive but a mile and a half, and then a mile and a half back. You know what I'm talking about? So
Mm-hmm.
that engine that treated that engine worse at times because of the moisture buildup and everything. And she never changed the oil because she didn't have 3,000 miles on it or 2,000. And so she, at the end of the term, she didn't realize it, but she had a lot of moisture in her. She had a lot of corrosion probably building up. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Now, Black Betty, that he's talking about, that it's setting there. There is going to be some contamination from just normal temperature changes. So you do need, but if you will take that car out once a month at least and run it and make sure it gets the temperature and run it at temperature for about 30 40 minutes to an hour, that will 90% of the time take that moisture out of that motor, and you shouldn't need anything after that. Most of the engine oils today have a good additive package in them that takes care of contaminations. I say most of them. Our oils are made for racing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we do. But that standard, and you can put their XL1 engine treatment in there, but it's made to give you performance. It's made to give you longevity. It's made to stop wear. And it will stop corrosion. That's what it's made for. So I'd recommend using 1 ounce per quart of our engine treatment. It's just going to help. But you still need to take that car out and drive it once a month and get it up to temperature. And, so letting it set in there is just, people think, well, I want to get it out, drive it here and drive it there. As long as you get it to temperature, that's the biggest thing you need to do. But I would recommend, and don't use, if you're have a race car, use 2 ounces per quart. If you have a regular car, only use 1 ounce because it's just a waste and you're throwing your money away. Just use 1 ounce per quart in a regular car. You tow vehicles and stuff like that, always use just 1 ounce per quart because it's going to help them. It's going to help every car it's in.
Yeah, and I've always found that fascinating too. So that with the XL1 engine treatment, that in a racing application, because we're so demanding of our oils and additive packages, that it's going to increase, the horsepower, probably a little bit on the torque end too, and protect the engine. But when we use it in a towing vehicle or even a regular car, because we're cutting down on friction, then we're also reducing the wear of our engines. And in addition, I've found that it also increases my gas mileage on my vehicles. And that was what was really fascinating to me, trying it in a little Toyota when I first tried it. And it was that was really eye-opening for me.
When I owned the X1R Corporation, years back, we had an opportunity to do a test markets, and to be doing the test markets, we had to prove that we got better fuel economy to work with a certain group. So we hired the University of Florida to do our testing, and we did over the road track test, uh, uh, at the racetrack, you name it, benched engine test for months and months, and it costs a lot of money. But what we did find, you just in the race cars itself today, you can have one or two things. You can get better fuel economy, or you can go faster, but they don't go together. I can just
No,
tell you.
no, not at all.
So but a regular car will run. This product doesn't know where it's at. It's going to reduce friction. It's going to reduce your parasitic drag. It's just going to do a better job for you. But don't overuse it. You just throw your money away, because a little bit, think of it like, when you put salt on your meat or your greens and whatever, it really gives it a nice flavor. This is sort of similar to that. Don't put too much, because you don't need it. You're just throwing it away.
Yeah. And I see a question here from Tommy. He says, how often should we wash tires with grip? The grip by Aqua.
But it really depends on how much you race, but I would recommend, if you go out there and if you run, say a 25 or 30 lap race after you treated the tires, I'd recommend just going through the entire process if you run a good race on them, because you're not going to hurt them to clean them. It's just going to put them right back, and then put your green, blue, or black, or whatever you're going to use on it. Now, our black is very aggressive, so I tell people, when you use that the first time, the second time, make sure you use the green or the blue, because I don't want you to overdo it. But the black is a strong product, but I would recommend, if anybody's out there that want to treat their tires, use the blue. The blue is a solid, great product. The green and the blue are very, very similar, except the green will flash quicker. Now, I've got a lot of asphalt guys that just rave about it, because they can paint the sidewall, and the sidewall works better. You don't believe some of this. We get some great people calling in, and then but the products work on asphalt. They work on dirt. They work on anywhere. Go-karts, big cars, little cars, 8-inch tires, and drag racing tires.
Yeah.
So it doesn't know where it's going to work.
Yes.
Wherever it's at. It just doesn't know where it's at, and that's okay.
And you worked with a ton of different types of racing to see that. So yeah, it's whether it's some off-road stuff or drag racing or pavement or go-karts, like you've kind of seen it all. I mean, your grandkids were in
Junior dragsters.
Yeah, junior dragsters. I was thinking.
Yeah.
I could see the picture in my head.
Yeah. And it's cool, because the junior dragsters are easy, because they could actually, during the races, it's just big around, so they can just manipulate it, and then and so you get to really see the products work, really quickly, but with the way they do it, and it's pretty neat to see the smile on their face too, when it grips and goes. But those are sure cool. Those parts are faster than you think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they'll go.
I mean, you got a little a 6 or 8-year-old kid in there running 65, 70, 80 miles an hour at the end of the track. That's fast.
Yeah, it's fast. It is fast. I see a comment here from Darren. He says, Daytona1 oil just showed up at my door as we speak. Thanks, Buck.
All right, Darren. Thank you. Thank you for ordering from us. We appreciate it. And we appreciate everybody that uses our products. Well, I hope we do. And gosh, if we can ever answer any questions or whatever, you feel free to call Kate. And if because I'm always out and about doing something, but Kate can get a hold to me. She's got every number I got.
That I do. Well, and then what's great too is the questions that kind of lead us to the videos that we've done. We've done videos on so many of your products, and it's just a great way to answer any of those questions. And so I think here, we're right at about an hour. And I want to, gosh, thank you so much for joining me on the show tonight. This has been a wonderful conversation. I hope a lot of people listen to. But tell people where people are. Tell the audience where they can find you in Daytona 1.
Well, they can find Daytona1 at CrateInsider.com.
Oh, thank you. Well, and your website has some good information too, which, by
Yeah.
the way, I built.
You can go to www.Daytona1.com, Daytona1.com, and see a lot of information. But we want you to call Kate in order to order the products from her.
Well, thank you.
She has to make a living just like we do, so we all work together, and it's and she does a wonderful job, and I hope everybody. I know everybody knows that already, but she does a great job for us, and we appreciate Kate very much.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for joining us on the show tonight. You can find Daytona 1, of course, on Crate Insider. You can also find them on Daytona1.com. Follow them on Facebook. They've got a YouTube channel as well. And I think you also have an Instagram account. Do you have an Instagram account? I'm trying to remember.
We're trying to upgrade all this,
Yes.
and it's
Step-by-step process. It just
it's
is.
you have to realize that when I'm from North Georgia, I make chemicals and lubricants. I'm not a techie guy.
Mhm.
And we proved that because I almost didn't get on this show today. So
You got it. You got
I
it.
got it.
You're here though. You're here. It's all good. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for listening. If you want to catch the podcast, you can listen to this in your car, going down the road. We're on Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, basically anywhere where you might listen to podcasts. And of course, if you are listening to us as a podcast and like to join us live on the show, then you can find us at the Crate Insider Facebook or YouTube channel, 7 p.m. on Mondays. And next Monday, I have an exciting guest. I'll go ahead and talk about that. Ken Anderson from Race Fan. He is the inventor of Race Fan. His company is Grand Prix Engineering, and I'm really looking forward to having Ken back on the show. And so any questions you might have about cooling or fans, cooling as it relates to fans. He's also the inventor of the air shock. So I'm hoping to talk to him a little bit about that as well. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you guys next week. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. See you.